All right, hey guys. So my kids' school just released the fall new normal school situation. Let me go ahead and say that they will not be attending this fall or at all, um, unless things change drastically. And in my humble opinion, as a mother of three, um, a nurse that worked in the emergency room, and I also taught for 3 years. Just my opinion, this is not medical or personal or any type of legal advice, whatever. I would not send my children to what they are about to do to these kids. This is communism. There's no way this is legal. I have no idea how they are getting away with this. But I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. I'm not going to show you the actual school. I don't want y'all to, safety reasons. But I'll just say that it's in South Louisiana. So, phase 1, it will just be online schooling. But phase 2, using phase 2 Louisiana Department of Education guidelines, schools will reopen for all students Monday through Friday in phase classes. They will be limited to static groups in elementary school, about 21 students. Okay, and then they will be forced to social distance to the maximum extent possible. An ideal number would be 6 feet. How interesting. Face coverings, masks, will be required during arrival, transitions, dismissal, and while on the school bus. Face coverings are recommended at all times. Each of the schools will be modifying our practices to include daily temperature checks of your children. Daily temperature checks. Masks for all students in grades 3 and above. Amended cafeteria operations, and additional enhanced safety protocols. A virtual option will be available for families that do not wish to have their kids go to this communist situation. It doesn't say communist, but so phase 3 will be the same as 2. But wait, it gets even crazier. And this is my daughter's first year in high school. She's really upset. She's upset with me right now. But there's no way I'm going to allow her to be part of this operation of mental instability. This is, for a fact, a CIA used technique for breaking down people mentally, emotionally, and all of these things. And I'm going to show y'all some of that in just a minute. Buses will operate at 50% capacity, maintain appropriate social distancing. Bus operators will be required to wear a face mask covering, everybody will be required to wear a mask on the school bus. With the windows open to facilitate airflow. This is Louisiana. It's like 100 degrees with 90% humidity, but I'm not going to go there. I'm just talking about the mental, all of this combined really is a mental, who is at my door? That's weird. Okay, in phase 3, they will operate at 75% capacity. Okay, so for a school system that already has a school bus driver shortage, this means that it will probably take a few hours to get the kids to school, or the parents will just be forced to drive them to school, which, will interrupt. All of these things, let me explain this. All of these things it's not just one snowflake that causes that avalanche. It's a bunch of things. And that's what all of this is, to break you down. to make things so miserable that you just say, whatever, just what do I have to do to get my life back to normal? It will never be normal again. But that doesn't mean I'm being negative. I'm being realistic. But we don't have to abide by their games. We don't have to participate in their CIA torture techniques, especially when it regards your children. You as an adult, you do whatever you want, but you need to truly know the research about this stuff before you tell your kids to use hand sanitizer multiple times a day, which 70,000 children were hospitalized between 2011 and 2014 because of hand sanitizer. And they just put an additional 5 hand sanitizers on the dangerous list, which means there's 14 hand sanitizers that are so dangerous that they shouldn't be used, but they're going to continue to allow them on the market. For those who don't know, your skin is your biggest organ. So when you're putting on hand sanitizer that has 95% alcohol, you might as well be drinking a shot of moonshine. Well, not really, but it's pretty close when it comes to kids. I have seen it multiple times, both working in the ER and while I was a teacher. I saw children go home. Their parents thought they were drunk. They had no idea what was going on. They tested with a blood alcohol of legally drunk. Come to find out, it was just because they were using hand sanitizer. And that happens a lot. A lot. Let me go ahead and start this, but I also want to talk about obesity because, you see, 1 in 5 people in the U.S. die of obesity-related issues, but yet everybody is freaking out about corona. We have such a rate of obesity and morbid obesity that no one's ever seen before. I mean, it is a pandemic. I guess it'd be epidemic because not all countries. This should be a concern. When 300,000 people are dying every year because of obesity, and we're not having to make up the numbers or create tests for this, it's just occurring. But yet we have McDonald's and Burger King and all of these places continue to stay open. Fast food, all of these foods, the crappy food from school, the food aisles at all of our local grocery stores, but yet that's not a concern. But they want to pretend that they care about our kids or us. They are now creating fake meat to take over all of the meat industry. They've even made fake breast milk. They are trying to play God, and it's going to end up very horribly for a lot of people. They have already created blockchains to where they can track every single banana, every single coffee bean, every single thing that comes from farms, and farms that are not bowing down to these new blockchain situations are being forced to shut down. The amount of farms that have been shut down is astonishing. The food supply chain right now is completely breaking down, but they want us to be concerned with we might possibly get a bad cold. And then use your children as guinea pigs of this social experiment. So let's go ahead and listen to Lee Dundas. She's a lawyer.
It's Attorney Lee Dundas here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today, along with the educators and school districts and parents, about children and their risk of death from COVID and the changes that schools are starting to contemplate making in the fall of 2020. First of all, your child's risk of dying from COVID is really, really low. The fatality rate in the U.S. for children is so low that kids are actually at a higher risk of death from traveling to school than from catching COVID at school and dying. In fact, the risk is so so low that my calculator cannot do the math. There's so many zeros behind the decimal point. And recently, a Bloomberg article quoted the CDC as stating that, and I quote, the COVID-19 fatality rate in the US for anyone younger than 19 is so low, it is calculated at 0.00%. So according to the CDC, your child's risk of dying from COVID is 0. This is what we also know. Your child is not going to catch COVID at school and become the dreaded silent but deadly transmitter of the disease who brings it home to grandma and kills grandma. Right now, your child, this is another direct quote, no child is known to have passed COVID-19 to adults, a global study finds. The World Health Organization actually performed contact tracing and found exactly 0 children had passed the disease onward. This is pretty much the same for adults, by the way. In case you didn't catch it, at the end of May, a study came out that showed an adult who was COVID positive but had no symptoms was exposed to almost 500 other people. 0 of them caught the disease. And then this last Monday, the World Health Organization came out and said they are following, and this is another quote, they are following contacts and they are not finding secondary transmission onward. So secondary transmission from a COVID positive patient who doesn't know he or she has it is pretty much non-existent. So what we know at this point in time is your kid's not going to die from COVID. They're also not going to catch COVID, bring it home to grandma, and kill grandma. And accordingly, there's really no reason to make any sort of changes to school protocols, particularly those involving social distancing. But I actually want to talk a little bit about social distancing right now, because social distancing is actually a technique that might be causing more harm to our children than that which it seeks to avoid. So social distancing is a euphemism for social isolation. It was a technique that was developed about 70 years ago by the CIA, and they found it was really, really good at breaking down enemies of state. It creates depression, poor sleep quality, impaired executive function, accelerated cognitive decline, poor cardiovascular function, and impaired
let me see.
Immunity. All of those are things I think we can agree we don't want anybody to experience, not least our own children. It doubles your risk of death if you're Black. It almost doubles your risk of death if you're white. And the harm that you get from enacting social distancing and social isolation on somebody is the same as if they were very, very obese. Moreover, it destroys the part of the brain that is actually responsible for learning in our children and ourselves, which is known as the ventral striatum. Medically speaking, what recent studies have shown is it is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day and being an alcoholic. So put simply, we'd be better off lobotomizing our children, handing them a pack of cigarettes and a fifth of whiskey, and then sending them into homeroom than we will be by socially distancing them this fall. I want to actually go back now to the sordid beginnings of how this social distance, social isolation technique was developed by the CIA. In 1951, the CIA held a secret meeting at the Ritz-Carlton in Canada, and it was a meeting with doctors present who had ties, and I quote, to the US, UK, and Canadian military forces. The work at that meeting and subsequent meetings led the CIA to realize that social distancing and isolation techniques were, I quote, the ideal way of breaking down a prisoner, and another quote, as effective at destroying the brain function of the prisoner as if the prisoner were beaten, starved, or deprived of sleep. Senator John McCain, who spent over 5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam and had all of his arm and leg bones broken multiple times, and who was also by turn subjected to multiple rounds of social distancing from his fellow POWs, had this to say about social distancing and physical torture. This is what he said about social distancing. It's an awful thing. It crushes your spirit more effectively than any other form of mistreatment. 150 naval aviators who were also held as POWs in Vietnam came home from the war and echoed what John McCain had said. They said, and I quote, it was as torturous and agonizing as any physical abuse they suffered, to be separated from their fellow American GIs. The UN Mandela rules actually now prohibit the use of more than 15 days or 2 weeks of social distancing and isolation, classifying it as cruel and inhumane treatment and basically a war crime. So now that we know that there is zero reason to make any changes to our school children, since they're not at risk at all, there's zero risk of them dying from the disease, and they're not going to bring the disease home to grandma. And we know that social distancing is a wartime technique that the CIA uses to break down enemies of state. I want to look briefly at where this 6-foot rule came from, because it seems sort of, magical, right, in the time of COVID. So it turns out that the 6-foot rule came from England, where a lead researcher recently came out in the press and admitted that, quote, officials had told him they did not think the British population would understand what 1 meter or 3 feet was. And, quote, we could not trust the British people to observe it, so we doubled it to be on the safe side. He went on to state, and I quote again, the 2-meter rule was conjured up out of nowhere. And he concluded by referring to it as a, quote, rule.
Out of nowhere. Literally. And you can say, oh, she's making all this stuff up if you're new to this type of information. No, the information is absolutely out there. You just got to get off of your mainstream media, mainline drip feed that you've got. I don't care if it's Fox, I don't care if it's CNN, MSNBC, you've got to get off of it. They're all owned and controlled by the same corporations, the same entities. There's about 6 of them. They're all owned by the same people. The celebrities, all of these people, all own and control all of these people. You have to go to actual studies. Go into Medscape is pretty good, but going into the different PubMeds, NCBI, actually, if you just absolutely, and I recommend everybody do this. I don't recommend you just trust anybody that talks on here. That's why I show the actual studies. And so any pushback that I get would just be from people that are in complete denial. Because you cannot deny the multiple studies of masks, of social distancing, of the virus being transmitted, all of these things. Many of my videos have been pulled by YouTube because they don't want you to have the truth. They want to continue pushing this narrative. Recently we had, I'm going to continue playing her video, but recently we had the president of Guyana read the lockstep document, which rolled out exactly what the UN and the World Health Organization is doing, and that they had this written out like 20 years ago. And there was another president in an African country that called out the World Health Organization, told him to leave their country. He died a week later. And then there was the health minister of Tanzania, I believe it was, I did a video on that, where they were doing quality assurance on the corona test kits. Papaya was testing positive. That's a fruit. Goats were testing positive. Motor oil came back with a undetermined result. They just tested a whole bunch of stuff, and they come back positive or undeterminable. And there's a reason for that. It's because PCR was never meant to test for these things. Even the inventor of the PCR has expressed that whenever they were doing that with the HIV. That's it. But you have to look into these things. When your kids have a higher rate of death, driving them to school, or obesity, or drowning, or all of these things, what are you going to do? Wrap your kids in a bubble? No, you're not. But yet people seem to be okay with putting a muzzle on your child. Here's your muzzle. Stay 6 feet away from your friends. Everybody, I didn't read that part. Everybody in the cafeteria must face in one direction. So everybody's breathing in that direction. There is no scientific reasoning behind this. This is being made up on the fly, and it's despicable. Because, these things are being made up, but the social experiments of these actions We know the ramifications. We all know. We even know deep in our hearts that this isn't right. You know it's not right. To have these children coming to school and to be treated like prisoners, because that's what it will be. It will be a prison. I'm not even going to talk about the education system as a whole, but the fact that you're going to be treating children like literal prisoners and doing medical, I mean, how can you say that they have to wear a mask? You can't. I honestly have no idea how any of this is legal. Wearing a mask when we know that it decreases your oxygen rate, it increases your heart rate, it increases your blood pressure. Anyone with anxiety or any of these other situations know that, and asthma and all of these things, you know that's a situation. It's one thing for you to do it, but this is mentally and emotionally affecting these kids. It already is. And people, I couldn't believe that I saw people excited in the news. Oh, look, the guy. Oh, I won't. The school board put out the guidelines. The guidelines of how your kids can come to prison. It's disgusting. Let's go ahead and continue.
Rule of thumb rather than a scientifically proven measure. Casting even more doubt on the lack of science underlying the 6-foot rule is a recent study in which researchers found, and again I quote, that preventive social distancing can increase the final epidemic size at the population level and thus have negative effects for the community at large. You heard me right. Preventive social distancing can make the epidemic worse and increase the size of it. But here's the real problem, folks, in terms of the educational issue here. If we do a 6-foot rule of distance for our school children, at least in California, versus 3 feet or something less than that, we simply cannot fit all of the California school kids into their classrooms at the same time and maintain that 6 feet of distance. So what the educational system in our state is going to have to do is they're going to have to toggle it. 1 day at school, 1 day at home. Or 3.5 hours at school, 3.5 hours each day at home, and do some sort of a hybrid remote learning model. And here is the problem with that. Each summer, kids lose 1 month of the education they gained during that year. It is known the world over by educators everywhere as the summer back. 5th grade, by about age 10 or 11, those children, the poor children, the lower socioeconomic children, behind their age peers due to this effect. Right now, California has almost 10 million children in this state. Only 1/4 of them are Caucasian. About 75% are children of color and minorities, and almost half of the kids in our state, 43%, are poor or, quote, very, very poor. Mm-hmm. So this is what we know. Remote learning does...
And that's honestly the same as most kids throughout the country. And yet, we don't hear any outcry about that. Because you won't. Because it doesn't fit the narrative. I taught at an inner city school. And it was bad. It was really bad in multiple different ways. But I'm not going to go into that. I don't want to make this longer than possible because people have short attention spans, unfortunately. Because this is very important information when it's regarding children. Even if you don't have children, if you have grandchildren, or whatever, or even if you just support the Constitution of, like, you know the whole my body, my choice, that works for them, but not for us. This is absolutely calling good evil, evil good. That's what they're doing throughout this entire reality game show that they are playing. It's like, oh, it's okay to go attack Christians at their churches, but you can't go peacefully protest to have your businesses open back up. We can put muzzles on children even though we know that it doesn't really prevent anything, and it mentally breaks them down, even though kids in the U.S. have a higher rate of suicide and obesity and all of these things. much more of a concern. We're going to close down parks, but we're going to push all of these other things. Anything that's good. We're going to shut down the sports. We're going to shut down the parks. We're going to shut down anything that would give you time to have exercise, have, playing with other kids, doing all of these things, gyms, from the children to the adults. And if you don't stand up for it now, it will be too late. I honestly am shocked that more people have not stood up for this as of right now. Maybe, just maybe, if you see now that it's affecting the quality of life of your children and grandchildren, maybe you'll do something. I hope and pray. I'm blessed enough that I know how to teach, and I can teach my children. Most people haven't had that training. They haven't gone through that. And they're going to be put into a situation where that's going to be their choice. Either go to work, leave your kids at home, and that's another thing that's going to happen. We're going to have children being left at home. We already have suicide hotline calls out the roof. We have domestic violence calls out the roof, and numbers of children being beaten at home during this that levels emergency rooms across the country have never seen before. You don't have to say this was all planned. You don't have to say any of that. But you can obviously see that this is horrific and it's not right. Are you going to risk your child possibly with a 0% chance maybe get a virus or be scarred for years, maybe even their entire life? Because these are the years that mold their minds. Obviously, as a Christian, I look at it from a different viewpoint, but I don't want to muddy the water with people. But Christians, you know what you should be doing, and we should absolutely be standing up. And honestly, in my opinion, I would be more open to just say, now we know your cards. They just showed us their hand. They just showed us that they give nothing. They do not care about these children. That they are willing to put muzzles on them and hand sanitizer with 95% alcohol in it all day long, to where they're just mentally, emotionally drained, away from their friends and all of these things. No sports, no anything. They showed us their hand. This is how much they care about your children. And now we can do something. We can have self-run schools. They already have charter schools and all of these things, but we can do it in a smaller manner in our communities. That's the only thing that's going to work right now. And then you couple that with the farms and all of these other things. I know this sounds wacky to people. Like, no, what are we going to go back to the 1900s? Yeah, honestly. Because we can't trust these people to do anything. We gave up so much of our power. Okay, yeah, we want to go to work. Women need to go to work. Both parents need to go to work. Oh, who cares? Who even needs two parents? Let's just have one parent households. Yeah, we've seen how that's gone. That's gone real great, right? Let's get rid of God in the school. Let's get rid of anything that's good. We're going to give trophies to all kids, not make them work for anything, pass kids no matter what their actual grade is, and set them up for failure. I've seen it with my own eyes. That's what they did. My 8th graders were on, the vast majority of them, I would say high 95% of them were on a 4th grade level. And they didn't care. The school board did not care. They passed every single one of them to high school. I went to a charter school in a 7th grade. They were all about the same on a 4th grade level. And they thought it was odd that I cared. I guess because I have white skin or something. It's not white. I mean, it's not white. But they really did. They would ask me, Jennifer, why do you care about these kids? They're not going anywhere in life. That would come directly from the school board. And for those who are watching me right now that you know what school board I taught at, you might want to think about that. You might truly want to think about that. Because it was quite disturbing to see. Now, granted, some of our schools are good, but as a whole, they're showing us their hand. Their hand is they have no problem using CIA torture measures. Make no mistake, that's exactly what this is. You can sugarcoat it and call it whatever you want. Put little butterflies and rainbows on it, but it does not change the fact of what they are doing.
Doesn't work well for anybody, but it really, really works badly for these kids who often only have one.
I'll leave a link to her video. I think the original one was taken down. But you can read the traumatization of loneliness and suicide ideation among former prisoners of war. I mean, so many of them said they would have rather been beaten along with their battle buddies rather than being put in isolation. And you might say, oh, well, social distance isn't isolation. Yeah, it is. Stop kidding yourself. You can kid you know what? You can kid yourself. Don't cheat your children. Or your grandchildren. You know this is wrong. Everybody knows that this is wrong. I don't know how anyone can look at these pictures of what they're doing in these classrooms and think that this is okay. Having these kids stand so far away from each other. Look at this. This is what they want. This is already going on. Look at this. And that's another thing that was on I didn't go through the whole 10 pages or whatever. Plexiglass. Here. Put yourself in the plexiglass. It's going to save you. No, it's not. This is horrific. I like this. The new normal. Satellite tracking, muzzle mask, brain blockers, chip implant. That's the vaccine. Social distance sensor. They've actually already discussed these. So don't say, oh, that's crazy. No, they're already inventing these. They probably already have them, but remove their gender. Yep. Endless vaccinations. Yeah, because don't think that it's just one vaccination. They've already said this is going to take multiple vaccines, even though they have no idea. Or do they? Rubber spine. Absolutely. This really... This is the last straw. And I mean, y'all know it's been the last straw for me for a while. But whenever I saw this morning and saw people praising it, I'm just like, people have gone that much in a coma of lulled to sleep by the mainstream propaganda. I mean, oh my gosh, I just can't. I cannot understand the reasoning here. When we allow our children to eat McDonald's every day and Burger King and Popeyes and all of these things, knowing that 1 in 5 people die of obesity, right? But yet all of a sudden, everyone's so dang concerned about their health. How is that possible? It's not. it's just because they've pumped it into your mind so much. Preventable, but yet we don't prevent it. They actually glorify it. There are entire groups that glorify childhood obesity. They glorify female obesity. And this is not to shame anyone. This is out of love. I mean, I'm not at my ideal weight. I'm not going to try to pretend I am. But when we're sitting here knowing the cost here, and we're like, oh yeah, we're just going to keep eating all this. We're going to keep sitting here and watch TV. And yeah, our kids don't really need to go outside. They just need to play video games and all of these things. And then say, oh my gosh, everybody put on a mask. Where's your hand sanitizer? Get the hand sanitizer. Do you realize how truly insane it is? It's truly insane. 50% of toddlers okay, this one's hard to read. 1 in 3 children are overweight or obese. 1 in 3 children. Infants to preschoolers. 43 million preschool children of the world are overweight or obese. America is at the top of that, which hypertension, type 2 diabetes. I mean, two decades ago or something, we never saw type 2 diabetes in children. Never. Now it's practically common. But we want to worry about coronavirus or a flu or something else. This is something that attacks your body all day, every day for the rest of your life. That can be preventable. I mean, kids dying. I watched at least two 20-year-olds, 21, 20-year-olds that were very much morbidly obese die of a heart attack. I mean, that's incomprehensible. But yet it happens so much. And it's not because of drugs or some health, birth defect. It's what we're doing to ourselves. I just don't know how anybody... That's my advice. Oh, yeah, this. 70,000 kids drank hand sanitizer. And when they say drank, that's just like... They might have just licked it. And it really... not many, but... a few of them went into comas and had to go to the ICU. I think 1 or 2 died. I don't think it's a huge, maybe, I don't know how many died. But look, toxic hand sanitizer have blinded and killed adults and children, FDA warns. I mean, I've been talking about this for years, ever since whenever I began selling all natural skincare and the professional makeup and the silver that we can't talk about anymore right now because the FDA doesn't like things that help people. All of a sudden now they want to talk about this when we've known about it for so long. They said next to soap and water, alcohol-based hand sanitizers are the next best option. Sure. In 5 cases, children ended up in comas. More than 70,000 calls about kids ingesting hand sanitizer were made to poison hotlines between 2011 and 2014. Within 3 years. And that's not whenever everybody's like corona'd out. This is why, I mean, just do the research yourself. I'm only doing this out of love and to try to wake you up. None of us are perfect. This isn't any judgment. This is, please wake up and see what they're doing to your children, to our children, to the next generation. kids. It's sick. It's truly sick. I mean, this type of stuff is praised. Oh, don't say anything. That's mean. Don't be mean. No, it's mean not to say anything. Anyway, guys, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Like, share, and subscribe. Bye, guys.